Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. So in the last session, we have discussed many different concepts of SPM. We have discussed about the SDLC. We have seen waterfall model. We have seen spiral model. Then we have a discussion about the estimation. Okay. So today we will start with estimation techniques, right? So estimates are an inputs for planning the execution of product. Okay, to plan the execution of product, the estimation are or estimates are really important. Estimation determines how much money, efforts, resources, and time it will take to build a specific system or product, right? So it is like when you ask for a rough estimation for anything, like if you want to buy a computer or a laptop, you ask for the quotation, right? So the quotation is only for money. But here, when we are going to develop a product, it is going to consider the four different parameters: money, of course, the efforts, the resources that are required to create the product, and the time span, the whole time span required to develop a product or a system, right? So the four basic steps in software project estimations are: estimate the size of the development product. Okay, so we need to estimate the size, that is the length, that is how much the length will be, the length of the code, that is LOC. Okay, so estimate the size of the development product. Next is estimate the effort in person months or person hours. Estimate the schedule in calendar months, and estimate the cost of the project. Okay, so here there is a slight difference between in-person months or hour and estimate the schedule. Effort is what is effort? So effort is actual work we do to to achieve a goal, right? That is an effort. So you do some work to get some output that is desired. So in-person months or in-person hours does not say that the person worked for a day and he got the output. No, here we need to calculate how much exact time a person will require to create a particular task. And accordingly, we need to calculate how much time it will take to create, if someone requires, 1 day to create 10 different data tables, different data tables. Okay, so for to build a complete database, how much time he is going to require. So accordingly, that is calculated, and accordingly it is scheduled in a calendar. So here, when you do scheduling, that time we need to consider that there are some national holidays, there are some weekly offs, or that person have asked for some leaves. Okay, so with consideration of all these aspects, the scheduling is done. Then ultimately the cost of the product, like what is going to be the cost of the final product, how much we need to pay, how much should be the budget, and accordingly we are to start the execution of the project. I'm sorry, there was some technical problem. Okay, so these are the different estimation methods: uh, algorithm, analogy, bottom-up approach, top-down approach, expert judgment, and Parkinson's law. These are the typical estimation methods which are used to find the estimate of a project. So algorithm is step-by-step estimation of tasks and processes. So you know what is algorithm. It is basically step-by-step, when you write a program, you write algorithm before actual coding. So that is a step-by-step execution, right? So here also, when you are going to estimate, you are going to estimate the whole different task and set create the estimation of each and every task and process. Analogy, comparison of proposed project with the completed. So several times it happens so that you get a similar type of project, the project of management, school management, college management. There is an analogy, right? So there will be some features which are matched when you develop the program. So that time you will get the idea, whole good idea, that how much time it took that time and how much time it will take. So you can, do the analogy, and accordingly you can schedule your work. Bottom up approach, each component of software is separately estimated and results are summed. It starts with the lowest level task. Okay, so right from the level zero level, that is the lowest level, it is going to rise in every step and going to calculate the estimation of each and every process. Top down approach is exactly opposite of the bottom up approach. It is going to start with the topmost high level task to the lower level task. Okay, then expert judgment, based on the judgment of knowledgeable staff. So you must have seen that we always take in companies, it is such, it is like a ritual that you take the advice from your experts or your senior most staff, because he must have, gone through different types of projects. So he have the clear picture or the idea how much time it actually takes when you go for the execution. Okay, so his judgment plays important role. It guides also, and it gives you, kind of rough idea how much time it will take to create, if this is the depth of your project. So this is also one of the important aspect. Then Parkinson's law says that efforts estimate is equal to amount of available resources. So how the number of resources is going to be the time it is going to take, or the effort you will require to get the project done. Okay, now basis of estimation techniques. The parameters to be estimated are, so the important two parameters which play the vital role when you do estimation is the time and the efforts, right? So the whole project will be based upon these two parameters, though the size, the efforts, everything plays important role, but these are the major 2 points which will give you the exact estimation. Okay, so it will give you how much efforts you need to put in to get the desired output and how much time it will require. Okay, so these are the important parameters. So when you manage the time and the effort, you will get the successful output, right? So duration, that is time. Number of hours a programmer needs to work to finish a task. This is a duration. These hours get scheduled with respect to offs and holidays, etc., as I have discussed earlier. Duration is generally measured in months. Okay, because the projects are huge, they are, they are very huge projects or large projects, so they take months or years to complete, and accordingly the duration is calculated for each and every employee, that is work per month, or PM, that is person month. So it is this is the PM is the appropriate unit, as it contains only time work has been done, excluding the offs and holidays. So per person, that is person month, the time required will be calculated, and accordingly the scheduling is done. Okay, measure of work. Measure of work is size. Okay, how much coding you need to do when you go with the execution. Work is characterized by the cost required to accomplish the task and time over which it is to be completed. Measure of work is also called as size of the project, like 1 year project, 3 year project. Okay, so as the size goes on increasing, the time it is going to take will be increasing, right? So this is the measure of work. Time takes to write a software, that is actual coding, depends upon the competence, skill, experience of a developer, right? So this is the important thing, that when any organization choose people to for their company, they need to be skilled, they need to be, have some different skills, or they should have the competence, they should have some experience, they should be very well familiar with the concept that they are going to work in, right? So this will, you know, affect the time it is going to take. If you will take or choose novice user, that they don't have much experience, they are new to industry, then though they will work, but the time they will take, or the time required, will be obviously on a higher side. Okay, so these are the things which are considered while you give work to employee, and accordingly the employees or the team members get chosen. It is mandatory to estimate project size, because accordingly efforts and time can be calculated. Okay, so to estimate the project size is very much essential, because that time you will get the concept or the idea how much time it will require to finish the project, and accordingly you need to distribute your work and efforts and time. Project size is independent variable. Okay, size is independent variable, but time and efforts are dependent variables. Time and efforts are dependent variables of size. They are directly dependent on the size is directly dependent upon the time and efforts. Okay, as time and efforts will increase, ultimately cost of the product will increase, and vice versa. Okay, so size is independent, but cost and time is totally dependent. If you will increase the time, it is bound to happen that the cost of the product is going in a higher side. Okay, so as time and effort will increase, ultimately cost of the product will increase, and vice versa. You got it? So, you know, if there is a rise in size of the product, that if you are going to make or develop a product in a higher side, like it is taking much time to develop the product. So if the size will be higher, the cost will be higher, the time required to, you know, write the code will be higher, and efforts. So total efforts that are going to put in will be in a higher side. So everything will become, you know, it will take more time, more cost, more efforts if the size of the project will increase. And if you will decrease the size of the project, then the cost required will be decreased automatically, so as time, so as the effort that need to put in, right? So these are the factors which, you know, work in accordance with each other. Efforts estimation. As I have said, what is effort? You know, when we use this word effort, that means we know our goal, what we need to do. Okay, and accordingly we work to achieve our goal, right? So effort is what? Effort is something or the work that we perform to get the desired goal. Okay, so that is the work that have, you know, done with considering the output and the goal in your mind. So effort, the definition or the formula for effort says the effort is equal to size into productivity. So following are the parameters which affects the efforts in direct or indirect ways. So first is size, second is processes, third is personnel, fourth is the environment, and fifth is the quality. Okay, so if the size will increase, as just now we have seen, is if the size of the product will increase, everything will be increased. It will take much time, more time to write the code. So ultimately it is going to increase the cost that will require to, you know, fulfill the job. And ultimately it will increase the efforts that will need to put in to create the code. Okay, so we need to do coding which will reduce the size of the LOC, that is line of code. So to reduce the LOC, use HLL, that is high level languages like C, C++, Python. You know, many object oriented languages are there. So we need to use such languages which have some properties, like, you know, there are a hierarchy, there is a class, methods, then you can do what we say, various what we call it, functions. Okay, so these are the different type of programming we perform to reduce the size, and you just call the function, you call the method, you call the class, and the rest job is done. So this is how you can work in, right? Then common components, reusability, that is again a property of OOP. So these are the different things that you should incorporate you should incorporate in your programming, so that the line of code will get reduced. So the size directly impact upon the time. The more is the size, the more is the time it will take, right? So to reduce the size of the product, you need to do certain things, like you need to use some LOC OOP concept, so that you will get really less time, and it will be done in a efficient timing. Processes like methods and techniques. So how you are going to use different processes or methods to write the code or the programming. This is also important. Personnel, that is the team, as we have discussed. There should be a very efficient team which knows what to do, how to do. They have this, they should have good skill, they should have good knowledge about the technology. Then and then only they will be able to do the job with respect to time, right? The environment, that is the automated tools and technology. Like you must have heard of the automated testing. So it requires less time with compared to the actual manual testing. So there has to have some automated tools and technologies which will reduce the human hours, or which will reduce the hour or the time to done the things. Okay, so these three things, processes, personnel, and environment, directly affect upon the cost. Okay, that they directly impact the cost. As the processes are more, as if the team is more, or if the team is taking more time to do the work, if the environment is not sufficient, it is not that automated, or there is no higher end technology incorporated, then it is going to take a longer time duration, and ultimately the cost of the project is bound to increase. The quality is the performance reliability, that with whatever you are developing in your product, it should give you the desired output, the output which is expected, with the good quality. There should not be crash or errors, or it should be robust, the program should be robust, it should take the load. So these are all things comes under the quality that we are going to see in next few chapters. Okay, so if you will see these parameters, size, process, personnel, environment, and quality, these definitely or ultimately impact the time, cost, and quality. Okay, so for calculation of the effort, these are very important things. So size should be low. Okay, processes should be, there should be required number of methods and techniques. There should be a good quality team. There should be some good environment where there must be some good new technologies, automated tools, right? And there should be performance reliability. So if all these things will be there, the efforts will be put in a good cause, and which is going to give you a successful product as a output. The next part is project monitoring and control processes. Monitoring and control. Okay, monitoring and control processes continually track, review, and report on project's performance. Okay, so whether it is any organization or whether it is any business, there have to have somebody who have some superpowers, who is there to monitor each and everything which is happening. Okay, unless it is there, nobody will be on the track. So in project also, when we talk about just a project, there should be some authorities who is taking care of the things are in place. The people who are working in projects are doing the right job. in right time. Okay, whatever they are thinking, whatever they are doing is going in a correct path. So there has to be somebody, or there has to have that control which will make the project on track always. Okay, it is important to find out how a project's performing and whether it is on time. Okay, so that is a mandatory thing, that the project performance and the time it is going to take. This ensures the project remains on track, on budget, and on time. So when everything is in track, everything is on track, it is going to, directly impact upon the budget and the time. Okay, so lesser the time, lesser the budget. So that is the whole calculation is. Project control is a project management function that involves comparing actual performance with planned performance and taking appropriate corrective action. Okay, so you have planned to get over with database creation in 1 month, and it is taking whole lot of time to create the table or to create the database or to integrate that database. Then we need to take the corrective action at that point of time to save other time. Okay, so we need to take the corrective of appropriate action. Maybe something might be wrong, or the person who is doing is not capable, maybe he don't have that much skill. So all the corrective action should be taken at that point of time and should get sorted, right? Project control is a continuous process of monitoring, planning, and revising the plan to get the desired output in the given frame of time with quality. So this monitoring and controlling always going to review whatever you have done till now, and it is going to check whether it is up to the mark, whether it is giving you the desired output or not. If at all there is anything which is not going as per the planning, we need to reschedule it, we need to take some corrective action, and then again you need to plan. Okay, so these things goes on, this is like a cycle. Okay, like execute the plan, obtain the results, analyze the result, identify the variances, analyze the results, unacceptable. If there is anything unacceptable, then identify the root cause, consider the option, take the corrective option, implement, analyze. So it goes on and on till you get the desired output in a given time frame. Okay, so this time is an important part, you should not miss it anywhere with the quality and the desired output, right? What is project control? The project control processes mainly focuses on measuring planned performance versus actual performance. Okay, so it is always good to build a castle in the air. Okay, it will take hardly 5 days or 10 days to give to a code or to write the program or to finish the project, but when you actually perform it, it is going to take no, it will be a total different thing. It is going to be a different scenario altogether, which you have never imagined. Okay, so just to thinking about anything and actually performing something, there is a huge difference between these two things. So measuring planned performance versus actual performance will help you to control the project. If it is not going as per your planned time, or it is not going as per your planned schedule, then you need to change the thing and you need to take some corrective action so that it will be again on the track and it will give you the performance or the which you have planned for. Ongoing assessment of project's performance to identify any preventive or corrective actions needed, keeping accurate, timely information based on the project's output and associated documentation. Okay, so keeping accurate, timely information based on the project's output and associated documentation. So this is one of the important thing, okay, which many people lags in. they don't do documentation. Many people in many organizations also, they don't do documentation. They think this is a, no, this is not my job to do documentation, or they feel they don't feel to write the things every time. Like you have done this particular time, it has taken this much time to complete it, this much errors are there, okay, this is not working well. If you have note of everything, if you have note of everything while working on any project, then it is always easier to not track the things. Okay, when you stuck up somewhere, and if you have whole lot history there that this everything has happened, so no, this is the corrective action that has been taken, or this is the thing is not working, so this is how have made, this is the corrective action have taken. So everything is there on your document, in your document. It will certainly help you to check where the things are going wrong and to get the project in control back again. Okay, so documentation is a very important thing, and we need to do this documentation part. Monitoring and control keeps projects on track. This improves the productivity and efficiency, right? Now, project control. Okay, so as we have discussed, how the project can be in control. So there has to be somebody who is, guiding us, or who is taking care of all the routines that is going on, who is tracking the development, who is checking day-to-day activities, who is checking the daily reports, who is getting the daily feedbacks, what all work has been done till the date, and everything. Okay, if this type of structure is there, then it is very easy to to take to be the project in track, or to evaluate the project, to see the success of the project, or see what is actually going on. So it makes the things visible, it makes the thing visible. You can see, actually analyze the process or the progress of your project. Okay, so these are the, as we have seen it earlier also, the responsibilities of the people who are there. There is a hierarchy, like top steering committee, or the client or the sponsor is going to be the top steering committee. Then there will be project director who will handle different projects. Then there is a project manager. Okay, then there is a team leader. Then there are analysis for, there is a team for analysis designing, there is a team for programming, there is a team for quality control, there's a team for documentation. And yes, there should be a team for documentation. They have the track of each and everything that has been done till the date. Okay, so it is very easy to track or to see what all things has happened during the workflow. So there are different teams. So the team members are going to report or give feedback to their team leader. Ultimately, the team leader is going to give feedback to the manager, and so on and so forth. So everything will be under control. Everybody knows what is going on. The project manager and the steering committee will get the essence of the success of product or project, right? If there is no communication between the people who are working for the project, then nobody will be aware that what is actually going on. And suddenly, if they will come up with some different type of risk, or any kind of fail, or any kind of no, the project is not working, or it is not doing anything, or it is not giving the desired output, then it is really a tedious job to do backtracking again. Okay, so to save the time and to save the energy, these all things are very much important, and that is why project control should be there. Monitoring and control method. Okay, so how you are going to control and monitor the project. Okay, I'm talking about the project now. That is WBS, work breakdown structure. Okay, so you know the goal of your project, you know what is the desired output, what is your problem statement, you know why you are developing the project, and what is going to be the output of that project. Okay, so you know everything, you know the problem definition. So now this time, when you are aware of each and everything, it is very easy to divide the things into different parts. Okay, So in WBS, the work is divided, the task of the work is divided into subtasks. And then again, the subtasks are divided into new subtasks. Okay, so this is how they are going to, what we will say, they are going to divide the work into different tasks. Again, one task is divided into 2 3 different tasks again. So now till the time you will get it like one single person can do this. Okay, so this is how they get divided, so that everyone together will build something with the common goal. Okay, so this is the work breakdown structure means. Use a work breakdown structure to break a project down into small unit of works or subtasks. This makes the work easier to manage and evaluate. Okay, when you have to write a big program to for calculator, okay, you need to create a program as a calculator. This is a problem statement, so you need to perform various operations like addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, percentage, everything. So if you will go with the whole at a time, then there are fair chances of messing up, there are fair chances of getting bugs and errors. But if you will do addition part, you will debug it, you will see it is working fine. Okay, then somebody will do multiplication, somebody will do division, and then we are going to integrate all these programs together to create one calculator program. Okay, this is efficient task. Okay, and if anybody will perform, or if the coding will happen in this way, then definitely there are very less chances of getting the errors, or getting the output which is not as per the desired one, right? So this makes the work easier and manage and evaluate. This enables easier dictation of issues, keeps the project under control, and allows for easier progress verification, right? So that is why WBS is very much essential. Now the risk management. Okay, so whatever you do, there is always a risk in technology also, in your day-to-day also. So when you perform anything in project, you need to take care of the risk. There should be some forecasting. Okay, there has to be some forecasting which will analyze the risk that may arise. Okay, there are sometimes you don't know what all there are. Uncertainties are always there when you do anything. There are the uncertainties may come in between. Okay, how to react some inevitables, how to react to all these inevitables or the circumstances, uncertainties. So this risk management is going to teach you how you are going to deal with the risk when they arise while doing the project. A risk is an uncertainty that cannot be avoided, but it can definitely be managed. Okay, so when some inevitable or some uncertainty arises while developing a program, you just cannot ignore it. Okay, or you have no control, but certainly you have something by which you can manage it. You have you can take some actions which will reduce the effect of the risk. Okay, so this is what is the risk management is all about. So project risk management refers to the process where a project manager tries to identify potential risk in advance, analyze them, and then take proper precautions that will help in reducing or controlling the risk. Okay, so project risk management refers to the process where a project manager tries to identify potential risk in advance. This advance is very important. This actually, the forecasting, like you analyze in advance, you analyze the risk that this may happen, if at all it will happen, and how you are going to deal with the problem. Okay, so you need to take the corrective action before it will arise. This is the risk management. Okay, you are not going to wait till the time the risk will arise. Now this has happened, and now let us work on it. So no, never. When you are dealing with the project, you have to be very conscious. You have to be very cautious while working. You need to understand what all inevitables may arise, which all risk uncertainties may arise while developing the program, and you need to have a plan B always ready with you. Now the risk can arise at any point of the project life cycle, and by performing appropriate risk management, you can ensure that your project remains on track and meets the goal. Okay, so when you are not planned, or if you have not done the risk management, and if any uncertainty arises in between the development, it is going to take some more time to dissolve the issue or to take the corrective action. Here the whole time is going to be no waste, and then to keep or to bring your project back again on track, it is again going to take some time. So instead of losing or wasting this much time when the whole issue arises in, it is always better to take the precautionary actions while developing, and you should have that plan B ready with you when certain things will happen in project. In advance, you know what to do, what all corrective major actions you can take, and then when you have that plan, you can apply it and go with the project, so it will remain in track, right? So this is about the project risk management. The risk management framework consists of 5 processes, maybe having different jargons varying from organization to organization. So there are 5 major things which is a framework of risk management. So every organization have different nomenclature for the process, but the essence remains the same. Okay. So below I've listed down the 5 processes in detail. So first will be risk identification, risk analysis, plan risk action, implement, monitor, and control the risk. Okay. So this is a risk framework, right? So we are going to see each and every this part one by one. So step 1 will be identify the risk. You and your team uncover, recognize, and describe risk that might affect your project or its outcomes. There are a number of techniques you can use to find the project risk. During this step, you start to prepare your project risk register. Again, this is a kind of documentation, okay, that whenever you start with coding or developing or execution of the program, you write down or you have that thing in your Word file or any sort of text file, which is giving you the clear idea which about the risk, what all risk may happen, or there is a fair chance or probability to get this risk while development. Okay, so you have to prepare this project risk register. Analyze the risk. Once the risks are identified, you determine the likelihood and consequences of each risk, how they are going to impact and where they are going to impact. That is also very important issue. Okay, there are several risks which may arise during the course of project. You need to identify what is the type of risk and where it is affecting the whole project, where what are the consequences of the risk. Okay, how it is going to impact, whether it is going to impact the output or whether it is going to impact the whole working of the product, right? So you need to consider this thing. You develop an understanding of the nature of the risk and its potential to affect the project goals and objectives. This information is also input to your project risk register. So you have to register this also, that if there is any kind of risk which may arise, then what are the consequences of the risk. Then evaluate or rank the risk. You evaluate or rank the risk by determining the risk magnitude, which is the combination of likelihood and the consequences. You make decision about whether the risk is acceptable or whether it is serious enough to warrant treatment. Okay, so some risks are there which you can accept that, yeah, this will happen, but anyways it is not going to hamper the work or no your output or anything in the project, so you let it just by that. But if some risks are there who are going to make a good much impact, then you need to take care of that also. Treat the risk. This is also referred as the risk response planning. During this step, you assess your highest ranked risk and set out a plan to treat or modify this risk to achieve acceptable risk level. How can you minimize the probability of negative risk as well as enhancing the opportunities? You create risk mitigation strategies, preventive plans, and contingency plans in this step. Okay, so how to treat this? You make some plans, that is plan B always, and you add the risk treatment measures to the highest ranking or the most serious risk to your project risk register. So this writing everything or registering everything in your project risk register is really mandatory. Monitor and review the risk. This is the step where you take your risk register and use it to monitor, track, and review the risk. Okay, so this risk register is going to give you the whole idea what has been occurred, what is the level, the seriousness of the risk, and what are the corrective measures which have been taken, which are the risks that we have not taken anything, we have let it go just like that. So the whole complete picture will be there in your register of risk register, right? The register of your risk. Now working in teams. As you can see here, many people working together. So working in team is the important when we are dealing with software. In software companies, there are very different departments. Where in project also there are different streams where people work together to achieve a common goal, right? So teamwork. So you must be very much familiar about this posture. You must have seen this before, any match, cricket match starts or football match starts. So what this signifies? This signifies that we need to work together to achieve our goal. Okay, when it is about the match, then the whole focus will be on winning and not about the individual performance, right? Individual performance is important because of course that is going to build the level, but the work that has been done or that is to be done in the whole program is to enhance the quality of the work, right, of a project as a whole together. It is not about the individual project, right? So let us see what is this teamwork. So team usually means group of people who are working together to achieve a common goal. Working in team means enhancing the communication between individual developers within teams and across the teams. The project team is sometimes used to refer to all the people working on a project. Okay, so as I have said, there is a team for testing, there's a team for designing, there's a team for creating a database. Okay, so there has to be a communication between the people who are working the same task at the same time. There has to have some communication between all the different departments of the same project. Okay, so when we say a project as a whole, all the people who are working for the same project have to have some kind of communication so that they will be in touch, they will be aware that what is going on, and they can work in a good environment with a good quality of work. Now, becoming a team. Stages of team development, how the team gets developed. So these are the five interesting things, that is forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. These are the five different tasks, that these are the different stages which are used to develop a team, to create a team. What is forming? Members of the group get to know each other. They try to set up some ground rules about the behavior. Okay. Now members of the group get to know each other. You must have heard of this induction programs are there in companies, or no, there is some introductory lectures, or there is some seminars, some group discussions. So here, while making a team, while creating a team, you must know with whom you are going to work with. Okay, so there is always a program, or there has to have some program which introduces each and every team member to each other, if department wise or project as a whole. But everybody get to know each other, who all are the people who are working in this project. So everybody knows about each other. And the second thing is, there are some ground rules about the behavior. As in, when you are working in team, you need to follow some protocols. There should not be your personal disputes. There should not be any difference of opinions. There should not be any kind of quarrels or fights among the team members. So there are some rules which are made at that point of time, where how you need to behave with each other. We have to respect the senior, though he's your best friend or something. But if in a team somebody is a team leader and somebody is just a member, then while reporting or something, they need to take care of the work principles. Okay, he is just my friend, so I will not give a report, or I will not report him. This type of behavior is not accepted when you talk about the industry and industry standards, right? So some protocols are already made when there's a team, when you are going to work together. Then the storming. Conflicts arises as everyone will try to dominate leadership. Group methods of operations are being established. Okay, so when many people work together, this is a human tendency that everybody wants to be in the limelight. Everybody wants to show that how capable I am. I can do the best in everyone in the team. Okay, I am the best performer. I do the whole lot of work. Okay, I am the only person who do all the hard work. So everybody wants to dominate each and every person who is in that team. But when this thing happens, there are fair chances of arising conflicts. There should be some misunderstanding, some conflicts, some disputes will be there. So where in this particular case, there, when such things will happen, they have to take some action. Okay, when such thing is happening in the team, which is going to disturb the whole equilibrium of the team. Okay, if two people among the team are fighting all the time, they have a competition, or they have the dominance over each other, then in such scenario, the equilibrium of the whole project or the team disturbs. So at that point of time, some corrective actions are to be taken. Group methods of operation are being established. Okay, so there are some group methods of operations are established, where some corrective measures, some important actions are there, which management can take to resolve the issue. Then the third is norming. Conflicts are largely settled. Okay, so in norming, you normalize the things. Okay, you see to it that the things are working fine. You normalize, take a consultation, or there is a communication. You do several things which make two people to be comfortable, okay, and work together. So these different things are there which happens, so that the people can work with the coordination, they can have some cooperation, right? Feeling of group identity emerges. So when somebody is giving you the doses of being equal, you have to work together, you have to show your strength, and you have to be successful. So this type of counselings are there, which emerges the feeling of group identity. Everybody will feel nice about the group. Yes, now this is our task. When I say this is my work, it goes to this is our work. And when everybody thinks on a similar line, the enthusiasm goes up, and people can work in a more proper way. Then the performing, the emphasis is on the task in hand. So now this everything is done, so now focus on the work. This is for performing. And adjourning, the group disbands. Okay, so many times it happens that many organization follows this rule that they never take the same people again and again the same project. Okay, they don't want people to be very good friends of each other, or maybe they are talking too much, they are getting very personal. They want it to be like a professional behavior. They require professional behavior. So many times in many organizations, they stick to this principle that if two people have worked together for one project, they make it sure that no, this the whole team will not never work again. Okay, unless they are doing the fantabulous job. Okay, so there are some things which may think the organization, which lead to think that if they are giving or delivering the good, then we need to keep them together. But otherwise this happens that the same team never works together again sometimes. So when the project finishes, everything gives up, that time the you stop the working, and this is the end. Or when there is a contract based products or projects, then the people will end up with the project, and this is going to be the group disbands. Okay, important points for better team and team management. Again, the project team structure, as we have discussed it earlier, there has to have some steering committee. There should be communication, there should be the exchange of reports. There has to be somebody who is giving the actual feedback of day to day working of the project. Okay, that is very essential to get the essence of how the project is going, whether it is on track or it is it is not on track. Now next is team selection and work allocation. Okay, so this is the important task of any organization. When there is a project which comes in there, sometimes it is you must have seen that when there is a new project, the company searches or gives some vacancies. There are some vacancies in a company. To fulfill that, they choose the people with some different tests and all. Okay, so this team selection is very much important. When you choose people who are going to work for the project, they need to check whether they are competent with the skill, whether they know what they want to do or what you are going to ask them to do. They know the technology, are they familiar with the things? Okay, if at all they are not familiar, then then the organization need to conduct some programs or seminars which will make the team member learn about what they need to perform or what they need to do. Okay, and as with respect to the skills or the IQ or the what we'll say the experience, the work should get allotted. Okay, the important work should be the person who is working for the first time, the fresher. Okay, the fresher graduate is working, and if somebody will make him a team leader, then he just don't have any experience, and how he is going to manage the team, though he have the good qualities of or the potential to be a manager or to be a leader. Still there has to have some experience with which he can go ahead with. So this team selection and work allocation is mandatory. Then 3 C's: coordination, communication, and cooperation. So when you work in a team, in a group of people, there has to have these three important factors, that is coordination, communication, and cooperation. If there is no good communication, that I don't like the person, that is why I'm not talking to him, I'm not going to submit the report, this is also not acceptable. There has to have some cooperation. When two people work hand in hand, there has to have some cooperation, right? So that the work will work smoothly. Then cooperation, coordination, and communication, as I have discussed all the three things. So in any team, these 3 C's are very important. If there is no communication, if there is no coordination, if there is no cooperation, then the equilibrium will disturb. People will not be comfortable with each other, and this is not going to give the desired output. Okay, though the people have good potential, but if it is not happening, then there will it will affect the performance of the people or the team members. Environment, yeah, environment again plays a vital role. Environment, as in the physical environment as well as the total in all environment. So first we will talk about the environment. As you must have seen in many big companies, the environment or the sitting place, the sitting arrangement, the total ambience of the company is very good, very fresh, bright, so that people will think that we should go there and work. Okay, so it should be very pleasing, it should be very refreshing, so that everybody will think that to go and work, to go and work. Okay, so the atmosphere or the ambience of the place where the people are going to work or team is going to work should be very good, pleasant, with good products and good what we'll say, the gadgets that they are working on, like computers or the keyboards. If the keyboards are not working properly, the computer is not working properly, okay, the batteries are not good, so it is no switch, it is shut down, it shut downs all the time. So if such things are there, then people will get harassed, they will not feel like working like. So there should be a good environment, everything should be good in place, then people or the team member would will feel to work with. And the second type of environment is the the environment around us. Okay, it is a total mental environment, I'll say. Okay, if we'll say ki you are working in a good company, but the immediate boss or the team leader is not good with you, he's uh, uh, using some hard works all the time, hard words all the time, or he's not appreciating your work, he's shouting at you all the time, then also you will not feel to work with. Okay, so the environment should be pleasing, environment there should like that, where you will get the opportunity to learn new things, you should feel to work there, there should have the fair chances of learning. Okay, you should get something when you do a project, you learn many things, and you should get the opportunity there, right? So environment plays the important part. Then egoless programming, because there involves a people manager, there should not be any kind of discrepancy, there should not be the ego points. Okay, that he is not reporting me, so no, I will not give him increment, I will not give him any responsibility, I will not give the person opportunity. So this type of thing should not be there in any organization. Okay, then incentives and returns. So as we all know that anybody who works in any industry, he works for the money, okay, for the returns, because that is the whole and soul of everything, right? So in spite of the returns and incentives, if the people who are not working with you properly, or the people are not giving you fair chance, they are not giving you any opportunity, then there is a no, you will not never grow in your career. Like if you are a computer engineer, so for the first 2 3 months somebody have given you the work of data entry. Okay, so you can do it for 1 month or 2 months, like I'm just, this is the experience, so I'm getting experience for 1 month 2 months. Okay, fine, after that you feel irritated because this is not the work you have intended to come here, right? So irrespective of the returns you are getting, you should get something to learn in that team, and everybody should get that job satisfaction. When everything, these things will be there, the people who are working will work with the more efficient manner. As I have said, the self development, scope, learn new, so that is important. When you work in a team or work for a project, you need to take care of your self in development also, right? When you are developing upon a project, when you are working for a project, you need to take care, right, that you are also learning something out of it, you are also getting some good opportunity, you are also developing something, you are getting a good scope to go in further in that particular stream. So this should be there. Then democratic team, that is, so there is always a structure, like, one is boss, then he is, under him. But in democratic team, the structure follows, like, everybody talks to each other very nicely, friendly, so that there is no pressure on your peers, and they can work more efficiently. Then dispersed and virtual team, this is one of the aspect that has introduced some years back, where, as we know that in an organization they require skilled people, but if my company is in Pune, and the skilled people who are in Bangalore, so he will miss the opportunity, or organization will miss the skilled person. So this dispersed team or the virtual team concepts comes together, closes the people who are not remotely together. They are at their place, maybe, they are at remote places, different places, but still they work on the same project, so that the organization can use the skills and the work of that people, and they can use it in the project, and they can work super fine, right? So this is the concept of dispersed or the virtual teams. Now the next is software quality assurance. Software quality assurance is one of the important stream of any project organization. Okay, so you prepare any project, small project, big project, or anything. If it is not giving you the desired output, if the quality of the product is not up to the mark, if the product is, it is not robust, or it hangs all the time, or it is not giving you the output, or it is very clumsy, or anybody is not able to use it at a first time, like it is very hard to get into the program, you don't know the links, then probably people will not find it good to go with the program. So there has to be something which will assure the quality of the software, and that is why the software quality assurance is there. So SQA is a set of activities for ensuring the quality in software engineering processes. It ensures that the developed software meets and complies with the defined quality specifications, right? SQA is an ongoing process with the software development life cycle, SDLC, that routinely checks the developed software to ensure it meets the desired quality measures. Okay, so though you are getting the output, but if it is not the one which you have desired, or the one which you have developed for, then this is of no use. So this SDLC, as we have seen it in an earlier lecture, the SDLC checks or controls the each and every phase of life cycle. Okay, it is there to check or to monitor every phase of the software, and it is going to give you the output at every process, right? So here, using this SDLC, you can check the quality of the software that you are getting while developing the program. Software metrics can be classified into categories, 3 categories, that is product metrics, process metrics, and project metrics. Okay, so product metrics describes the characteristics of the product, such as the size, complexity, design, features, performance, and quality. So this software quality, there are 3 major types of quality. These are the matrices of the project, that is product, process, and the whole project as a whole. So the product metrics is for the characteristics like size, complexity, design, features, performance, and quality level, right? The process metrics, these characteristics can be used to improve the development and the maintenance activities of the software. Okay, so it looks into the development and the maintenance activities which goes in project. And project matrix. This matrices describes the project characteristics and the execution. Example include the number of software developers, the staffing pattern over the life cycle of the software, cost, schedule, and productivity. So here, this matrix considers the project as a whole. So the number of people, the pattern of the people, the organization, right? Then the software that you are going to use, any automated software, the technology, the cost, the schedule, the WBS, the productivity. So everything they are going to look into to assure the quality of your project. Okay, so these are the three different processes, that is product, process, and project. Now the advantages of SQA. Benefits of software quality assurance are: SQA produce high quality software. High quality application saves time and cost. SQA is beneficial for better reliability. Okay, the product will be more reliable if it goes through the SQA. SQA is beneficial in the condition of no maintenance for long time, right? High quality commercial software increase market share of company. So if somebody is giving or developing a good software using all the norms of SQA, then definitely it is going to increase the market share of that company. Improving the process of creating software, and it improves the quality of the software. So this SQA is a mandatory task. It gives you the product which is up to the mark. It gives you, it assures you the quality of the product. Now the next important part of any software, that is the testing. Okay, so this is very interesting, and this is a whole stream altogether. Okay, so there are, you must have seen testing is a stream. There are many type of testers. Okay, so we are going to see what is testing. Software testing is evaluation of software against requirements gathered from users and system specification. So first thing, this testing goes all the time. Okay, whenever you do any program, you test whether you are doing it right or not. You check when you write up code and you debug it, you compile it. That time also you get some error. That is also kind of testing. So you do testing all the time. When you do coding, when you do programming, you test it whether it is in accordance with the output that you are looking for, or whether it is, we are going out of the track, right? Testing is conducted at the phase level in software development lifecycle, or at module level in programming code. So when we talk about the project as a whole, when we talk about the project, so when the projects are big projects or huge projects, they are divided into small modules, like different modules for the different features which are to be there, which will be there in a project. So each and every module is developed separately, and then they get integrated and they work with each other, or they work together, right? So when there is a module development, sometimes the module testing will be there, or or there will be a whole total integrated testing will be there. Or if you are doing a separate different codes, then each and every code is getting tested, then it is getting interlinked with the module, and this is how they built up the whole complete software. So at the every time phase, there is a testing in SDLC. Software testing comprises of validation and verification. These are the two important aspects of testing. Okay, that is validation and verification. Validation. What is validation? Validation is a process of examining whether or not the software satisfies the user requirement. Though you have to check whether this is a valid or not, whether it is giving me the output that I'm looking for or not. This is the validation. It is carried out at the end of SDLC. So when the SDLC is over, when your whole complete project is over, when everything is integrated, then it will check whether it is giving you the output as you have planned for, right? If the software matches the requirements for which it was made, it is validated. Validation ensures the product under development is as per the user requirements. Validation answers the question, are we developing the product which attempts all the user needs from this software? And validation emphasizes on user requirements, right? So when at the first stage, while SDLC, when there are the requirements from the user or the sponsorer, whether the software have taken care of all the points which are there to be, you know, developed. So this gives the validation whether the product is valid or it is not. So the validation emphasizes on the user requirements, right? The next is verification. Verification is the process of confirming if the software is meeting the business requirements and it's developed adhering to the proper specification and methodologies. Okay. Verification ensures the product being developed is according to the design specification, how they are designed, how they want it. Okay. The, you know, the linking pattern or the working pattern of each and every module in the software should be as per the requirement of the user, right? Verification answers the question, are we developing the product by following all design specification, whether we have designed the way the customer or the client want it, right? So when everything goes through, it is a verified software. So this is the difference between the verification and validation, right? Verification concentrates on the design and system specifications. Targets of the test are errors, faults, and failures. Errors are, these are the actual coding mistakes made by developers. In addition, there is a difference in output of software and desired output is considered as an error. So when you verify the software, we see to it that there should not be any eggs or errors or bugs, right? Fault. When error exists, fault occurs. Okay, when there is a mistake in a code, it is going to give you some errors, but there is going to be a big fault when you know, still do the program. A fault, also known as a bug, it is a result of an error which can cause system to fail. Failure. Failure is said to be the inability of the system to perform the desired task. Failure occurs when fault exists in a system. So your program has to be clear and bug free. Okay. So to make such program, you need to do the testing more frequently when you develop any module or any code in the project. Now, there are basically two types of testing. One is manual testing and one is automated testing. As name says, manual testing is the testing where, you know, actual employee or the person is going to test the model which have been developed till the time. Okay. So when a person tests the module or the part of the software, it is called as a manual testing. And there is one thing that is a automated testing. So first see what is manual testing. Testing can either be done manually or using an automated testing tool. So manual testing is this testing. The testing is performed without taking the help of automated testing tool. Obviously, the software tester prepares test cases for different sections and levels of the code, executes the test and reports the result to the manager. Okay, so he creates different test cases, different variations in outputs or different types of you know, as an input, and he tests everything and gives the output that he have received while testing. Manual testing is time and resource consuming. The tester needs to confirm whether or not right test case are used. Major portion of the testing involves the manual testing. Okay, generally a major part of the software, it is, you know, good to go with the manual testing because there are some human errors that the human only is aware of. Okay, like when you write any or fill any form in the online form, there are fair chances when you make mistake by using some symbols or some numbers which are not expected there, right? So when such cases there, and if your program is not, if that form is not giving you the correct action that this is not allowed, instead of that, if that terminates, then you know you will be in confusion how to use it, how to fill up the form. Okay, so when there are some human errors or, you know, the mistakes that a human is bound to do when he is not that techno savvy or if he is not aware of the program, then it is better when the testing should be done with the human. Okay, So when a tester does this manual testing, he should be aware of what he's testing. He should create the good test cases. Otherwise, no, if the test cases are wrong, he is going to give the different output altogether, and this testing will be of no use. Okay, so the person who is going to test should have some essence of the code that he is testing. Automated testing. Automated testing is the procedure done with the aid of automated testing tools. So there are various tools which are used to test the software code. The limitation with manual testing can be overcome using the automated test tools. A test need to check if the web page can be opened in Internet Explorer. This can be easily done with the manual testing. But to check if the web server can take the load of 1 million user, it is quite impossible to test manually. Okay, so some things, or some cases are there where one user cannot just give the output or tell you the working of the program. Okay, so for that, some automated testing tools are required, as I have explained it here. Like, you can easily done with the manual testing, the whether the form is opening in an external Internet Explorer or any Chrome or something. Okay, but whether the web server is taking the load of 1 million user who are on that website at the same time, whether it is going to work or whether it is going to crash. Okay, so this thing they need automated testing, right? There are software and hardware tools which helps tester in conducting load testing, stress testing, and regression testing. Okay, now the testing approaches. Tests can be conducted based on the two important approaches, that is the functionality testing and the implementation testing. When functionality is being tested, how each and every feature, that is each and every function of the product is working, that is called as a functionality testing. So when functionality is being tested without taking the actual implementation in concern, it is known as black box testing. So when you are to check the functionality of any program, irrespective of the structure or the form colors or any external criteria, you are just not bothered about everything, but what you are interested in the functionality, how it is working, how the forms are linked. Okay, irrespective how they are looking right now. Okay, whether they are made it colorful, whether the logos are there, whether everything is in place, whether they are aligned in a good way, irrespective of all, if you click if you click on a button which gives the link to the next form and the same form is opening, then this is the checking of the functionality, whether it is working functionally as per the given the link, right? So that is tested, is called as a functionality test, whether the software is working. And the implementation testing, the other side, is known as a white box testing, where not only the functionality is tested, but the way it is implemented is also analyzed. So in white box testing, the whole code of the software with all the GUI, the interfaces, the user, everything is getting evaluated or getting tested. Okay, so this is called as a white box testing. So black box testing, it is carried out to test functionality of the program. Okay, so it is used to test the functionality, how the program is functioning, how it is giving you the output. That is the main important concern of this particular type of testing. It is called as behavioral testing. Okay, how the program is behaving for different types of input or the range of input, that is called as behavioral testing. The tester in this case has a set of input values and respective desired outputs or the results. On providing input, if the output matches with the desired results, the program is tested okay and problematic otherwise. Okay, so when you know what is going to be input, you are very well aware that what should be the output. Like if I'm going to add two numbers, 2 plus 3, I know what is the output, but I will check whether my program is giving me 5 or 6. Okay, if it is giving me 5, then it is working absolutely fine, it is functioning very well, so I'll say okay. If it is not giving me 5 and instead it is giving me some different value altogether, this is not a okay program, or it is not functioning in a proper way. In this testing method, the design and structure of the code are not known to the tester. The testing engineers and the user conduct this test on software. Okay, so the one who tests this black box testing, he's not aware how the software is going to look, how it will be there. He is just concentrated on how the functionality is working, whether it is working fine or not, whether all the formulas or all the things are used properly or not. That is the only main concern of this type of testing. Then white box testing, it is conducted to test the program and its implementation in order to improve the code efficiency and structure. Okay, so how lengthy the code is, how it is executing, how much time it is required to run the program. Okay, how lengthy is your program, how much time it takes to get the output, to process your program. So these all things are considered in this type of testing. It is also known as a structural testing. So it actually tests whole structure of the program or the code. In this testing method, the design and structure of the code are known to the tester. Programmers of the code conduct this test on the code. Okay, the one who writes the code, who is very well aware why he is writing, what is the structure. So generally this white box testing is the testing which is done by the person who is actually developing it, right? Now the acceptance testing. When the software is ready to hand over to the customer, it has to go through a last phase of testing where it is tested for the user interaction and response. It is important because even if the software matches all the user requirements, and if a user does not like the way it appears or works, it may be rejected. Okay, so whether no, you create a good software, it is giving you the desired output, but still it is up to the client or up to the user who is going to use it. If he does not like the way it is functioning, if he does not like the look it has, it does not like the anything of that particular software, though it is giving you the desired output, but still there are people who are very choosy about the software, whether it is taking too much time, that is why I'm not going to use this software. It is not, it is very complicated to use. Many people find Android phones very friendly than iOS. So everybody has their own opinion. So there is always a difference in opinion in people who are going to use. So this acceptance testing is very much important when it comes to a client, the choosiness of the client. There are two types, that is alpha testing and beta testing. The team of developer themselves perform the alpha testing by using the system as it is being used in work environment. They try to find out how user would react to some action in software and how the system should respond to input. Okay, so alpha testing is when everything is completed, the project is done, it is totally interlinked with database, everything is done. Now they will test the product as if it is working, it is in a working environment where the people are going, or where that program is going to get installed in. Okay, so you have to if some small kid is going to use the program, or some manager is going to use the program, so you have to think like it is in a working environment and how it is working. So this is alpha testing, where you consider that it is working in a working environment and you test the output of the program. Then the beta testing. After the software is tested internally in among the people or among the company or the organization, the software is tested internally. It is handed over to the users to use it under their production environment only for testing purpose. This is not yet delivered product. Developers expect that user as at this stage will bring a minute problem which were skipped to attain. So this beta testing, you must be aware, you must have heard the word beta testing or beta version. Okay, what is that? Actually, when they say this is a beta version, that means this version is not yet delivered or it is not yet launched yet. They have launched, or they have just given that particular part of the project so that people will use it, and the points that have skipped from the mind of the project manager or the people who worked on the project, there are fair chances that people who work for the project, the mindset of the people who work for the project, and the mindset of the client or the customer who is going to use the project. So all the things they get as an input. When people use this beta version of anything, they give some responses like it is working better on this platform, it is not working, or so they get clues and they get the important information which they must have missed while developing the software, and they can work on it and they can get it ready, and then they will be able to deliver the good quality product with which comprises of all the precautions and taken care of all the things that should be there in a project. So this is a beta testing. Then the regression testing. Whenever a software product is updated with new code, features or functionality, it is tested thoroughly to detect if there is any negative impact of the added code. This is known as regression testing. So why this is important? Because nowadays, because of this technology and different platforms, this no every time you will see that the things are getting updated, you are getting something new into it, you are getting some new features in your OS or in your mobiles, everywhere. Okay, so to be in competence with that, or to make it compatible, there are always changes in the applications. Okay, when such thing is there, when they add some feature or they make some new thing into it, when they add some new feature and they just cannot just attach the new feature into the old version and run it. It is not possible, because they need to check it whether the attached code is working in competence or in accordance with the previous code. It should give, or it should work in hand. Okay, it should not give you some different type of error. So regression testing is important, because when you develop something new as a patch, and when you are going to attach that patch to the previously developed software, you need to check each and every aspect of the program that has been done, though it was very error free and compatible that time. But after attaching a patch or new code, whether it is working in a similar line or whether it is giving some bugs or errors. So this is called as a regression testing. Now this is we are coming to an end. Project closeout. What is project closeout? Every project must come to an end sometime or other. Okay. It is the responsibility of project manager to decide the appropriate time to close a project. So he should be very much confident. He should ensure that everything is done as per the norms, and he should close the project. Once it is decided to close a project, the project manager needs to ensure that the project is properly closed by carrying out the project closure activities. And this forms the last phase of the project management life cycle. Okay, so this was the last phase of SDS, project management life cycle, that is the project closeout. So when the manager thinks, or the steering committee thinks that the work that have been done till the time is up to the mark, everything is done correct, everything is working fine, now you are sure to release everything. So now this is going to be the time when you call project closeout. So there are actually two aspects for project closure. So first being you have done your job successfully, you have completed everything, that is the one thing which comes to an end, and there is a project closeout. There is one more thing, that you could not complete the project and you made it a closeout. So let's see. There are the two main reasons for closing a project. All the project goals have been successfully accomplished. The project goals are considered to have been accomplished when all the project deliverables have been handed over to the customer, and the customer have confirmed that all project objectives have been met. Okay, so when everything is done, when the project is at the customer and he's working and he's happy with the product, then this is a time that you can call it off, like, okay, now things are done. So this is a one, that is a project closure. Or The second reason for closing the project is that it has been found that the project is unlikely to achieve its stated objectives and has to be prematurely terminated. So unfortunately, because of some circumstances or because of incapability or because of lack in resources, there could be several reasons which are the which make the project manager or the people of the project to just close the project in between. They need to terminate the whole all activities at any point of time. So this is very unfortunate, but yes, when they see to it that they are not getting what they are doing, they are not getting the result that they want to, they need to close the project. So that is the second time when project manager calls out the project, calls off the project. So reasons for project terminations could be the lack of resources, that you don't find people who know the skills. Okay, so that is one of the important reason, that you want to write a application, or you want to create a program for iOS, and you don't have any skilled people who can work in iOS, then you just cannot go ahead if you are intended to do for iOS only, right? So lack of resources, changed business need of the customer. Sometimes it may happen when you are doing a customized product project, and the business needs are different, when there are some changes that customer don't want this type of thing, and you have started, so you have to terminate the whole work that you have done so far. The perceived benefits occurring from the project no longer remain valid. Okay, like that I've discussed at the beginning of our first session. Like if you are creating a project, and meanwhile, while you are not yet completed, and meanwhile the same product will come up with good features, good technology, then there is no use to recreate the project. Okay, nobody will see to it, or nobody will like to buy the same product. So the that is a first come first serve. The product which will launch earlier, people will get more attracted toward it. So it is of no use to develop the same program again. So in that case also, project manager have to quit the project. They have to call it out, call it off. Then the changes to the regularity policies, like there are some satellite, suppose there is a satellite project where the communication between the satellite and something, some different type of project, and if the government policies is not allowing you to do certain type of project, where government policies are playing a role, where they are not allowing you to work on such thing, where there is a problem of security or anything. So in that case also, you should call the project off. Key technologies used in the project becoming obsolete during the project execution. So if you have started working on the project, a big size project for 3 years or 5 years, and at some point of time you will realize that the technology is getting obsolete, and you are getting, there is a new technologies which is coming in. So in that case also, it is of no use to build a model which is already is going to be older by the time your project will get launched. So that time also, they terminate the project. And the last is the risk becoming unacceptably high, when you just don't what we say, don't learn, or when you don't study your project in a very good sense, when you don't see that what all are the risks which may arise. Okay, if there is a lack in study about the project, if there is no proper actions are taken before planning, or while you do the planning of the project, if not if it is not taken care of the risk and everything, and at certain point it becomes so high that you just cannot handle the risk. Okay, and you remain with only one option, that is to terminate the project. So these are the various reasons which makes the project call off, right? So this is it. I hope you understood the concept of software project management, and big thank you to you.